it comes to disappointing teams in 2022, Baylor was certainly one of them. The Bears look poised to contend for another Big 12 title after going 12-2 and winning the conference in 2021, but instead they followed that up with a 6-7 losing season, going from the top 10 to begin the year to unranked by the end of the year. So now the million-dollar question heading into 2023 is, can Baylor return to form? Can Baylor return to that Big 12 title form, or will they fall way short once again? That's what we're going to answer today. So welcome back to the Gridiron Expert, guys. We're so glad that you could join us today. As always, please continue to like, comment, subscribe, share our videos, and check out everything down in the description below, including our expert picks over on our website, thegridironexpert.com. Some of the best college football and NFL spread picks in the entire country, guys, being out over 80% of the national analysts each of the last 5 years. Take advantage of those picks, guys. One of the cheapest prices in the country, and we guarantee you will win. Also, check out our Patreon account, our Patreon Wall of Fame. We appreciate all the guys that are there now, but we hope to continue to add more so you can gain access to exclusive college football content that you will not get anywhere else. So go check it out there. And also, check out our address. Send us some gear here. We got LSU, Tulane, Syracuse, thanks to our man Jerry Turner, and a handful of other helmets that we're going to be displaying here soon. Represent your team, become a part of our GE Nation, and get your team on display and represent them in every single Gridiron Expert video. So let's take a look at Baylor here. You know, again, it was a shock. 12-2 from 2021 to 6-7 in 2022. You could point fingers at a lot of different things, but overall, Baylor just wasn't entirely great on either side of the ball. But offensively, they were better than people realized. 32.2 points per game, which is pretty dang good. 7 starters returned from that. 7 starters returned from that offense, including Blake Shapen at quarterback, who threw for over 2,700 yards and 18 touchdowns last year. They had Dominic Richardson in at running back from Oklahoma State. They also returned their leading rusher in Richard Reese. They returned their leading wide receiver in Monterey Baldwin. They're looking pretty solid across the board. My only concern for them is the offensive line. The offensive line looking very, very shaky and could be taken advantage of at some point down the road. Defensively, that was their issue, right? It was great in 2021 under Dave Aranda, but then they allowed 8.5 points per game more in 2022 than they did in 2021. Over a touchdown more. That's going to lead to a handful of extra losses, and that's exactly what happened. The defense returns 5 starters, but they do lose 4 of their top 6 tacklers, and the secondary loses a handful of people to the transfer portal as well. Dave Aranda, he's a defensive-minded coach. Question is, can he fix it? Can he get those numbers back down in 2023? We take a look at their schedule, and I do believe Baylor opens the year at 1-0. They'll take care of Texas State, a really good opportunity to kind of wake up, see what this defense is made of, and work out any offensive issues that could arise. The big test, of course, will be the week 2 against Utah. Very, very intriguing game, right? The reigning Pac-12 champion and the Utes made the Rose Bowl last year, coming down to Waco. I love this matchup. It's going to be one of the more marquee matchups of week 2. But I got to go with the Utes here. I've got to go with Utah beating Baylor, even though they have home field advantage. This is especially the case if Utah's quarterback Cam Rising is 100%. He got injured in that Rose Bowl game against Penn State. Obviously a long road to recovery. If he's not 100% and maybe doesn't even play, that could alter our decision a little bit. But ultimately, even if Cam Rising doesn't play, the Utah defense is absolutely loaded. 9 starters back on the defensive side of the ball from a team that only allowed 111 rushing yards per game last year, so that's going to mean Blake Shapen has to win this game solely through the air. Utah's defensive line is absolutely loaded, and that does concern me with a questionable Baylor offensive line. Utah's defense, I think, ultimately is too much. If Cam Rising there, that's the icing on the cake. Baylor has home field advantage, but to me, that's about all they have going for them in this game. Utah gets a big, big road win. Baylor drops to 1-1, just like they did last year. They fell to BYU in week 2, falling to another team from Utah in week 2. They beat Long Island, so they're 2-1, and then they start Big 12 conference play. This is where the fun begins. This is the most important part of the season, right? They open it up against Texas at home. So you think about that, guys. Look at that schedule and how difficult that is. Utah and Texas, and then even at UCF in the first 5 weeks of the season. It's a brutal month of the year, brutal first month of the season for Baylor. I'll tell you right now, I do think they fall to Texas. This Texas team, we say it every year, but I think this year we actually mean it, is really, really good. They fell to the Longhorns 38-27 on the road last year. Baylor playing them closer than many expected. Were leading 9-0 early in the first quarter, led 19-17 at halftime, even led 27-24 in the fourth quarter, but then kind of collapsed down the stretch. Texas ended up winning that game by 11, and it should be noted that the home team has also won 5 straight games in the series. Like we just said, I think that streak comes to an end. Baylor, despite having home field advantage, will fall to Texas. That Texas offense is way too good. They're loaded, but basically with everybody back. And the defense, very underrated. We talk about the offense so much. This defense returned 6 starters after only giving up 21.6 points per game last year. Give me the Longhorns to beat the Bears in Waco, and then give me Baylor to lose at UCF as well. I know our man Scotty B, the Baylor King, kept saying this is a trap game. This might be a trap game. Either that or the game at Cincinnati. I think it's the game at UCF. Baylor has to be very mindful here. UCF in Orlando on September 30th, guess what? It's their first home Big 12 game. So UCF and Cincinnati and BYU, guys like that, some of those new Big 12 newcomers, UCF, their first home Big 12 game, they're going to be rocking. They're going to be pumped, and they're going to be excited. That's going to be a very hostile atmosphere, and I just don't think Baylor's going to be able to handle it. Factor that in, it's Baylor's first trip to the state of Florida since 1995 for a regular season game. That's going to be exciting in and of itself, but UCF, I think, is going to be a little too much here. A Baylor defense that gave up 148 rushing yards per game is now going to face a UCF offense that was allowing or rushing for over 220 rushing yards per game last year. Returns a lot of talent at the running back position, and returns a dual threat quarterback in John Rice Plumlee as well. Baylor in Orlando, to me, isn't a good fit. Gus Malzahn, a heck of a coach as well. UCF isn't going to lose their first conference game at home. Give me the win. Baylor leaves the month of September at 2-3. I'm a little bit concerned there. But I think things start to turn around a little bit. The schedule lightens up in the month of October. It really does. Opens it up with a home game against Texas Tech, who Baylor kind of owns for over the last decade. Baylor has won 9 of the last 12 games against Texas Tech, including a 45-17 victory on the road last year. Give me Baylor to take down a good Red Raiders team, right? Texas Tech is that team this year that I think could be the Big 12 dark horse. I really do. But I do have a lot of faith in Dave Aranda to draw up a defensive game plan. Even when Texas Tech has had phenomenal offenses, Baylor somehow finds a way to win, and I'm still not completely sold on the Red Raiders' defense right now. Baylor last year had a phenomenal performance, 45-17 victory, forced 5 turnovers, had 6 sacks. It was one of their better defensive performances of the year. I think with a new month, the urgency on back home, realizing they can't drop to 2-4, Dave Aranda and his squad show up, show out, and they continue their dominance over Texas Tech to get back to 500 entering that bye week. They come out of the bye week, guys, schedule still very, very favorable. So favorable, in fact, that I'm giving Baylor 3 straight victories. Make it 4 if you count Texas Tech. So the month of September is brutal. Month of October, I don't think they lose a game. I think they beat Cincinnati. It's the first meeting between the Bears and the Bearcats. Cincinnati, despite having home field advantage, I don't think it's going to do much for them. Baylor has been known to win in hostile environments before. Last year alone, they won at They won at Iowa State. They won at Texas Tech. They won at Oklahoma. They're not really scared of these hostile environments. Cincinnati, to me, does not have the offense to keep up with Baylor at all. And I think this Dave Aranda defense is going to torch Emory Jones, who I think is going to be mediocre at best for the Bearcats this year. So give me the win over Cincinnati, who I think is going to struggle quite a bit. Give me the win over Iowa State, who Baylor beat 31-24 last year, and also has won 3 of the last 4 meetings against the Cyclones. Iowa State certainly improving. They're a much better team than people realize. But at home, give me Baylor, who again has kind of owned the Cyclones over these last few years, has the defense to slow down the offense that we think could be better, but if they don't, will be even worse for them in this game. And Baylor offensively will have enough to exploit the Iowa State defense, just as they did in Ames last year. That 31-24 score made it look a little bit closer than the game really was. And then give me the win over Houston as well. I love it. The old Southwest Conference game between the Bears and the Cougars, their first meeting since 1995. Played every year from like the 1976 to 1995. Haven't played since, so it's really exciting to watch. Houston, though, really, really bad defense. So you talk about Cincinnati, they've got a bad offense. Houston's got a bad defense. I think Blake Shapen has himself a day against this Houston secondary that was really, really bad last year, allowing nearly 280 passing yards per game. Well, they improved slightly. Baylor will not lose this game at home. So just like that, guys, you go from 2-3 in the month of September to winning 4 straight games. They've clinched bowl eligibility. They're 6-3. Baylor, rest assured. So you're looking pretty good. While you might not be making a Big 12 championship game with those 2 conference losses early on, you are going bowling once again and have a chance to rack up a pretty decent record if you can survive the last 3 games of the year. At Kansas State, at TCU, West Virginia. Those 2 road games, though, very, very difficult. And as we know, it's never really ideal to play back-to-back road games, especially in conference play. But that's what Baylor has here. And they're playing 2 of the better teams within the conference in back-to-back weeks. I'll tell you, I think they'll lose both games to Kansas State and TCU. I do believe that. You look at the Kansas State game, the reigning Big 12 champions, Baylor lost to the Wildcats 31-3 last year, and that was at home. Now Kansas State, which still returns a handful of starters, will be maybe just as good, maybe even a little bit better than they were last year. And that game's now in Manhattan. I don't really see a 28-point swing happening, especially with Baylor now having to go on the road. So give me Kansas State to win that game, and give me TCU to beat Baylor as well. Last year was an absolute thriller. It was a game that Baylor should have won, leading by 8 points, 28-20, with under 3 minutes left. And TCU miraculously found a way to win. If TCU loses that game, they probably don't make the college football playoff. But somehow they found a way to win, kicking that field goal as time expired. As the clock was running, it was a heartbreaker for Baylor. And we love this rivalry game. It's a very intense rivalry game. It's usually pretty close and competitive between the Bears and the Horned Frogs. I expect nothing less this year. I know the Bears would love nothing more than to beat TCU now on their home turf. But I think TCU still is too good. They lost a lot from last year. They're going to have it all figured out by the second to last game of the year. Now it's on the road. Give me TCU to win this game there. But Baylor closes out their season with a win at home against West Virginia. Some will say, how's that possible? Baylor lost the Mountaineers last year. Well, yes, they lost 43-40 to West Virginia last year in Morgantown in a game where Blake Shapen was injured. He got hurt in that game. Baylor still almost managed to win. Now on senior day, back home, hoping that everybody is still healthy. I don't see Baylor dropping this game to a West Virginia team that, as we know, don't expect to be very good this year and may have lost all motivation by the time the final game of the year rolls around. So with that, we've got the Baylor Bears going 7-5 in 2023. I know for some that's a major disappointment. I will say this. It's the month of September that will ultimately define Baylor's season, whether it's a legitimate success or whether it's just a mediocre 6-7 win season. I could maybe see Baylor getting up to 8 wins. Maybe they do beat UCF. Maybe they do beat TCU. Those are some winnable games. Maybe they upset Utah in week 2. How they fare in the month of September, 2-3 versus either 3-2 or 4-1, will drastically change this season for Dave Aranda and the Bears. Regardless, 7-5 is not a bad mark. It's a shot at an 8-win season and a decent bowl game. But I know based on the expectations that have been set these last 2 years that it would kind of be viewed as a disappointment for the Bears in Waco. The talent is there. Baylor, record-wise and competitive-wise, will be better than last year, but I just don't think they're going to return to that Big 12 championship form that we saw in 2021. So guys, as always, thank you so much for watching us here at the Gridiron Expert on YouTube. Make sure to continue to like, comment, subscribe, share our videos, and of course, check out everything down in the description below, including our expert picks over on our website, thegridironexpert.com, our Patreon account as well. Send us some gear so you can represent your team in every single Gridiron Expert video. And as always, guys, thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time right here on the Gridiron Expert.
Yeah.